protecting Main Street from Wall Street. It's time for Money Unleashed with Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn.
You have to have a plan where you know if the market's going to go up, what happens next. And you also have to have a plan where if it doesn't go the way you think, you know what you're going to do.
It's time to put you back in control of your money.
I'm not trying to predict the weather, which is kind of what we're talking about, right? It's predicting the stock market. I'm trying to build a better boat.
This is Money Unleashed with Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn.
Welcome to Money Unleashed with Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn. It's powered by the Hoffman Financial Group. Each week, we're bringing you new episodes, so make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast. Just search for Money Unleashed. Let's jump into the show. We've experienced a lot of federal government layoffs since the beginning of the year. Now, for everybody out there, there's about 3 million people that are working for the federal government, but we're not going to be political about this, but let's just talk about if you're one of these 275,000 people, you're kind of up against it, right? 75,000 of these folks took the buyout that was offered to them, but there's another 200,000 that's on a kind of a probationary work service here where they may or may not be kept by the White House. And so a lot of lives have been upended because of this, and there's things you need to do about this, don't you?
Yeah, I think the tricky part is a lot of people make it political, but if it's about you, then it's very practical.
Right.
So, I think we all can agree that the government has some waste in it and there should be some efficiencies. Of course, this idea of DOGE has come along, the Department of Government Efficiency, and one of the things they're doing is they're laying people off, right? So then if you take it back into, all right, well, what if you're one of those people? If you're in a position of, say, 50 or 60 years old and you're coming into that last 5 years, 10 years before you retire, and all of a sudden you lose your job, that's incredibly stressful. So part of our role as financial advisors is to be able to step in that gap and help people out, because when you're facing losing the W-2, you've got to figure out how and where and when do you get your income.
That's absolutely right. And so for people in their 50s, odds are they're probably going to try to look for another job, right? But now we have all these other accounts off to the side that we did have. And if you're working for the government, it's usually a TSP or some sort of pension plan potentially if you've been there long enough, and you need ways to manage that. But then you also have people who are in their 60s and they're getting closer to retirement, and they might have been a year or two away from it, right? And they just got let go. So now we have a deeper question to answer is, hey, do I find another job for 2 or 3 years, or do I have enough to retire as well? And so for those of you out there who are in that area of, being between 60 and maybe 65 and losing your job, and maybe you're thinking about 67, now's the time to really sit down with somebody, specifically a fiduciary, and figure out what exactly do you have, and do you have the opportunity to retire now? Because that's something that you want to take into account. I have news for everybody out there. When you get let go like this, finding a job that's going to pay you the same amount of money at these ages in 50 and 60 is very difficult to do, isn't it, Kyle?
It is. But the good news is a lot of people come into our office with the fear, the worry that they're going to run out of money and they don't have enough.
That's
and
right.
I think you would agree with me. Most of the time, their fears, their worries are a little misplaced. I totally understand why they're worried. I totally understand all the things they're feeling. But when we look at the math, when we check the numbers, a lot of people are ready for retirement and they don't know it.
I know. And so a couple of the fears that we see is it's a race to zero. Now, if you're using the typical Wall Street model of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, it can be a race to zero. If you set it up properly, it doesn't have to be a race to zero, and you could still have a legacy to leave. You could still create income to supplement pensions and Social Securities, and you could still grow your retirement as well, even when you're pulling money from it every single month. So that's why it's so important to sit down with a fiduciary retirement planner, because if you try to go into this alone, yes, the fear is going to make you do things that you might not necessarily want to do. And getting that proper setup, tell everybody what it's like when you have a proper retirement plan put together.
So one of the things we talk about with clients in my office a lot of times is, have you ever seen the Bill Murray movie Groundhog Day?
Oh, yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
So he wakes up every day and he's repeating the same thing over and over.
It's cool at first, and then he gets tired of it, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
So for those of you that are worriers, let's assume you're Groundhog Day, you're Bill Murray, and you're going to wake up, you've got 30 years left in your life, you're going to wake up each decade to the same dull, awful stock market. And so that worry in your mind that you're unlucky, that worry in your mind that it's going to be bad is true. It's going to repeat bad. It's going to repeat awful for the next 30 years. Well, in that frame, 21 of those years are going to be green. They're going to be good. The market's going to be up. So that means you've got 9 years that you're really worried about. And of those 9 years, once each decade, 3 times, you're going to see a very drastic pullback. So 50, 60% collapse in the stock market. But the first thing that you learn when you're working with a financial advisor is what your allocation is. So for most, when they're in retirement, it's something around 60% stocks. If you've got 60% stocks, in those moments when the world is losing 50%, well, you're much more like 20. Okay? So here's the good news. If it was awful in repeat for the rest of your life, you're only worried about 3 years, and you're talking about 20 to 25% pullback. And if you're working with a team who specializes in protection, specializes in retirement, I would argue they can make it even better than that. So it puts you in a place that even if your worst nightmares are true, you're not going to see a lot of pain. You're not going to see a lot of trouble. You're going to be able to get through this. And here's the good news. You're probably not in Bill Murray's Groundhog Day.
Well, let's hope not.
You're probably not working up to bad markets decade after decade after decade. It's more likely that you're going to see a lot of prosperity over the next 30 years. And so it's not that we don't protect ourselves. It's that we protect ourselves to the moments that will come. But the good news is they're few and far between. These markets are solid. This country is in a good position. And so you can design something that you don't have to worry about, and you can move on, whether it's pickleball, going on the boat, playing golf, or hanging out with the kids. Go do something else. Don't let this market stress you out. One of my things that I'm most proud of is when somebody comes in and they're the analyst, I'll call them, right? They've got the Excel sheets. They are diving in every single day.
Yep.
Well, it's almost a mission for me to be able to, whether it's in 3 months or 3 years, get them to the place where they look at me and go, I'm not even looking at it.
Yeah, it happens sometimes, and that's okay, but it's a fast way to drive yourself crazy if you're paying attention to the ups and downs of the market. And for everybody out there who just lost their job, I'm sorry about that. It's never fun when you lose a position in your job. However, there are two certain types of people in different age groups, right? Like sometimes you got to take your old accounts and you got to forge ahead, and you got to find a way that's going to grow it more robustly than the 5 to 10 ways that you can do that inside of a TSP. So we're able to help those folks out and grow as they build their life and get a job until their retirement. But for those of you out there who do lose your job and you are wondering if you can retire or not, we specialize in doing that for folks as well too, by setting up the proper disciplines and the proper defense mechanisms to make sure that you are not left behind the next time we have a 2022, right? And what that entails is making sure that we have your income taken care of, number one, while still putting you in a defensive position. If things do go wrong, you're not getting hurt so bad, but you also want some money off to the side that's going to grow in retirement as well. And I would tell you, if you're out there and you have this worry, give us a call. We're able to help you. 404-640-5511. That's 404-640-5511. Or you can check us online at unleashyourmoney.com. But Kyle, there's another side of the coin to this now, isn't there?
There is, right? So the first side of the coin would be, we know a certain amount of people just lost their jobs, and we're talking to them about how they can replace their paycheck, replace their income, move through retirement. The second side of this would be those things that we look at to be able to try to figure out the stock market, right? So there are going to be things like inflation, things like GDP. There are going to be things like employment numbers. So I'm just kind of giving a heads up for people as they go through February and then, of course, March. We're going to be looking at some unemployment numbers that start putting some pressure on those numbers, right? So One of the things that I found, while the number of federal workers has grown over time, the share of civilian workforce has generally held steady. The federal government, again, this is excluding the Postal Service, accounts for 1.5% of total civilian employment. Except for a temporary bump in 2020, this has largely been consistent for more than a decade. So one of the things that we're talking about now is this idea that the federal government, the bureaucracy, has grown to be quite large, and that's true. So if you kind of look at it, through the 1970s, we're growing quite steadily until about 2010, but we've kind of sat the same from 2010 to where we are now. And so one of the things that's happening is the bureaucracy is changing. So there was a large amount of people that worked in the Postal Service, and it peaked in 1999 and then has been decreasing. So it's almost like there's been a shift. The type of federal worker has changed, even though federal workers as a size has remained relatively similar. So there's debates out there that we should cut those programs, we should decrease those programs, that they're gluttonous, that they're wasteful. I'm not here to have that conversation. That's a political conversation for the current administration to work on, and I root for them. So I don't care if it's the blue team or the red team. I'm the green team, so I'm rooting that they will solve and fix the problems that they see. What I'm bringing up here is that one of the most important numbers for investing is the unemployment number.
That's right.
If the unemployment number starts to go up, we have to have that conversation, right? One of the reasons that the economy does so well is just demographics. Sometimes people say, Kyle, this is complicated. I say, well, it's just people. It's just a big group of people buying, selling, trading, moving, developing, creating. That's all it is. And so one of the reasons that I've been so positive on the economic situation for a while is there's a large demographic of people between 30 and 50 that are working. And so that has been a positive. Now, I'm not saying that these cuts and these layoffs are going to lead to some major collapse. I'm just saying we've got to look at it, right? So much like there was a time before inflation got our attention and then everyone was talking about it, I think over the next 6 months to 18 months, we're going to be talking about these changes and adjustments in political policy and then what the repercussions are.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that when they're doing these types of policy changes, and let's be frank, that ever since the beginning of the year, it's been happening at a breakneck speed, right? I would argue that the dust is not settled, not even one iota, because there's been a lot of changes that's been happening. And you want to avoid knee-jerk reactions with your portfolio and the money that you're managing because of these changes, right? Because you don't know. This could be a very good change in the future, which could drive stock markets and economies up. I believe that our economy is in a very good spot right now due to the consumer. But if you're one of these people that has had your job let go, you might not feel the same way. So you want to avoid making knee-jerk reactions to this. And that's why having fiduciary help is essential in this stage of the game for you. So, Kyle, why is having a fiduciary so important?
Well, because there are so many different changes and adjustments, you want to make sure that someone's on your side. It's not just some broker selling you a product. It's someone who's leaning into the wants, needs, and wishes of your family. One of the key things that you've got to think about is some of you are listening to us talk and you're saying, I didn't lose my job. So one of the key things that exist would be an in-service withdrawal. You've gotten to 59 and a half and you're still working because you're pushing those last 2, 5, 10 years to get to retirement, but you actually have the ability, much like those that got laid off, to improve your portfolio in an IRA. So there are so many different things to look at, whether it be taxes or markets or different adjustments within policy prescriptions.
Or even if you can touch your money, right?
Exactly. Or even if you can touch your money. So by working with a team that is a specialist in retirement, by working with a team that has the competence and the capability to get you through these markets, and by working with a team that ultimately is a group of fiduciaries, that's going to give you the clarity, confidence, and capability to solve these equations as they come in your direction.
That's exactly who we are, and that's exactly what we do. So give us a call at 404-640-5511. That's 404-640-5511. Or you can check us out online on unleashyourmoney.com.
Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn are investment advisor representatives of Brookstone Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor and affiliate of Brookstone Capital Management, LLC. BWA and Hoffman Financial Group are affiliated under common ownership. Registered investment advisors and investment advisor representatives act as fiduciaries for all of our investment management clients. We have an obligation to act in the best interest of our clients and to make full disclosures of any conflicts of interest. Please refer to our firm brochure, the ADV 2A, page 4, for additional information. The Hoffman Financial Group and WSB are not affiliated. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered investment advice or recommendation to buy or sell any financial vehicle. This information should not be considered tax or legal advice. Individuals should consult with a professional specializing in the field of tax, legal, accounting, or investments regarding the applicability of this information for their situation. Any client experiences discussed during the show are unique to that client. They are not meant to imply or suggest you will experience the same results. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Investments will fluctuate and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. Any comments regarding safe and secure products and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Fixed insurance and annuity product guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing company and are not offered by Brookstone. Index or fixed annuities are not designed for short-term investments and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract. Please refer to our firm brochure, the ADV 2A, item 4, for additional information. Hoffman Financial Group is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. Insurance licensed in Georgia, number 163546.